guys, in this video I'm going to be showing you a really cool Scrabble puzzle I recently created and going over the solution. So the situation is you're currently down by a score of 330 to 450, so you're at a 120 point deficit, and you're currently sitting on a rack of ADEINRS. There are 9 tiles unseen to you, which means there are 2 left in the bag, 7 are on your opponent's rack. Those tiles are AA, BC, EK, TUU. Of course, you don't know which 2 tiles are in the bag and which 7 are on your opponent's rack. Now, this seems like a pretty tough situation at first. 120 is a lot of points to make up. It's well more than the typical bingo would score, and there's only 2 tiles in the bag, so time is quickly running out, and we are rapidly approaching the end of the game. To make matters worse, if we look at this board, we'll see that it is actually really difficult to use for either scoring or bingoing. So let's first look at this top left area of the board up here. This area of the board is almost impossible to use because the vast majority of squares in this area are already occupied by tiles. As we would say, it's almost completely exhausted. Now, the bottom left area of the board here and top right area of the board are also very hard to use, but for the opposite reason, namely there are almost no tiles over there with which you can play next to or play through. And the thing is, it's very hard to hook or play through any words that would help you access those quadrants of the board. It's worth mentioning the blank tiles here. This one in particular is an A for ETH and yoppings, and ETH is an adjective. It does not pluralize, so you're not able to put an S here with ETHs and play a bingo or any other word horizontally to try to open up the bottom left part of the board. The other blank over here is an R for Diggerati and RE. It's worth mentioning Diggerati does not take an S and isn't extendable, so you're not able to make a play down here to try to open that part of the board either. So that pretty much just leaves the bottom right area of the board here. And this part of the board is a little bit more promising. In particular, this S in yoppings is completely wide open for a bingo or possible play down here. And in fact, you do have a playable bingo there. You have the word sardines, which would score 80 points. So of course, the natural first instinct would be, it's going to be tough to bingo on this board. I'm down 120 points. I have a bingo now. Why not just bingo while I can? So this, again, is the most natural play to look at first, but as we'll see, it's not going to work. And the problem is it scores 80 points, and 80 just isn't enough, right? So if I get 80 points right now, that brings me to 410, which gets me to within 40 points of my opponent. And I know I'm going to draw 2 of these 9 tiles. I don't know which ones, but the thing is, it doesn't really matter. It's going to be impossible for me to make up a 40-point deficit on my next play with any of these tiles on this board. This board, as I mentioned, is extremely difficult to score on, even to play tiles on for that matter. And whatever I draw, my opponent is probably just going to play something to this S I just opened, unload some tiles, and easily hold on to win. So for instance, let's just say I draw an A and a B, for instance. My opponent probably will play something like Tux down here, which doesn't score a ton. It scores 12 points, but it gets rid of the C and the K, which are my opponent's highest scoring tiles. My opponent would rather not get caught with those when I go out. So that would give my opponent 12 points, putting them at 462. I have A, B. It's not particularly easy for me to go out at all, let alone scoring a lot of points. I could play something like Ban to this N. Ab technically gets me 1 more point right here. That would be 11 points. So 11 gives me 421. I get 3 times 2 or 6 more from my opponent. That brings me to 427. So I would lose 427 to 462 in this situation. Again, I don't know that I'm going to draw AB out of the bag, but it's I won't go through all the possibilities, but it's not too hard to see that other 2 tile draws after bingoing with sardines are going to lead to a similar situation where I'm going to lose by probably 30, 40, 50 points, give or take, depending on what exactly I have. Just because when I go out on the next turn, if I can even go out, if I draw something like UU, I'm not even going to be able to go out most likely. If I can go out, it's just not going to score nearly enough points to catch my opponent. And that's the problem with sardines. It is a bingo, but given the size of my deficit, it's just not a high enough scoring bingo. So, with that in mind, let's go ahead and go back to the original situation we had here, where once again my rack was with actually the tiles in sardines, since I was going to bingo with sardines from an S, but I know that I don't want to do that at least immediately. So usually in these kind of situations where you know you have to bingo, and once again, right, I'm down 120 points to start. Let me just reset the scorecard over here. So I'm down 120 points to start. I know there's no chance whatsoever I'm coming back and winning this game if I don't bingo. That's just not possible. There's nowhere on this board to score a lot of points at all, especially without bingoing, and it's pretty obvious that I am not going to have any chance of winning this game without a bingo. But I know that bingoing immediately is not going to cut it. So is there anywhere I can maybe try to open another line for bingoing? It's not easy at all. I could try maybe something like Jaeger on the left here to try to set up my S-hook, but the problem is, well, there's two problems, right? Number one, my opponent can probably just play something like Rack over here and block whatever I might draw. And number two, even if, say, I were to draw something there and also maybe from this S, it's just not going to score enough points, right? Jaeger gets me 12. I'm still down 108. After my opponent's play, I'll probably be down 120. I'm going to need over 100 points with my bingo, and it's just not going to be enough. Again, I won't go through all the possibilities here, but it is not all that hard to see that this is never going to win, because even if I do manage to get an out bingo, it's just not going to score enough. Probably the idea that comes the closest to working in terms of fishes like this is dropping the I over here for QI. Now, the idea with this play is it sets up a nice line for 7 other bingos on the row up here, hooking the D onto if to make diff, or possibly the R onto if to make riff. So this also gets me 16 points, which isn't bad for a one-tile play. So let's see what might happen if I do this. So once again, that's 16, bringing me to 346. Now, I definitely want to draw the K. That would be the best case scenario for me, because number one, if I draw the K, I hit Darkens and Diff, which is my highest scoring bingo I can get there. And number two, if my opponent has the K, then they're going to have KIF, K-I-F, which is a word, and be able to play horizontally, score a bunch of points, and also block my bingo line. So I pretty much need to bank on drawing the K if I go this route. But the problem is, even if I draw the K, it's just not going to be enough. So my opponent's going to have 7 of these 8 tiles. I don't know what they're going to have, but they're certainly going to have something from this S that at least allows them to get rid of a couple tiles. So let's just say, for instance, they play something like Sauce. Something very simple like that, as we'll see, is more than enough to hold on and win. So Sauce doesn't score a lot of points. It only scores 8 points. But the problem is my opponent already has such a big lead that it's going to be enough. So this would make it 458 to 346. I would bingo out with Darkens and Diff, as I mentioned before. And that is going to score me 87 points as an out bingo. So I'll get 87, which would bring me to 433, plus 6 times 2, or 12 from my opponent's rack. That's 445, which, as we see, is still going to fall 13 points short. My opponent, in this particular situation, would win 458 to 445. And this is just if they play Sauce. They're often going to have Scuba or something like that that's even better. So this is definitely just one example, but they're all quite similar. So again, not too hard to see once you do the math that this QI idea looks promising at first, but is simply just not going to get you enough points. So it seems like we're kind of striking out here as I reset the board once again, since I've kind of exhausted all of my fishing options that try to open up a new line, and it just doesn't really seem like, other than this S, which I can bingo with immediately, as I was mentioning, there are any lines on this board. However, that is actually not true. There are a few very tough to hit, but sneaky lines on this board that it just so happens I have the right tiles to try to hit. And let me just reset the score pad another time. The line that's actually going to be the most relevant, or one of the most relevant ones, I should say, as shocking as it sounds, is actually this Q in query that I was just talking about possibly fishing next to with QI. And the reason it's shocking at first that the Q seems relevant is because, of course, the vast majority of words that start with a Q have a U as the second letter, especially longer words like bingos. And while there are 2 U's on the scene that I could maybe draw at least one of, the thing is I can't start a word horizontally with QU going this way, because that would make UF, which is not a valid 2-letter word. So if I can't start with QU, then how on earth am I going to bingo there? Well, it turns out the key word I want to look for is the very obscure, but famous, at least in competitive Scrabble, word of Kindarka, Q-I-N-D-A-R-K-A, which is the plural of Kindar, which is a monetary unit of Albania. So what I notice is that there's an A and a K unseen, and I have 5 of the letters I need for Kindarka. I have I-N-D-A-R, but I'm missing the K and the A. So if I can fish off the E and the S and then draw the K and the A, I may possibly be able to get Kindarka on my next turn. And I see I have a nice spot to play off the E and the S right here with Pixes, which gets rid of those 2 tiles and also scores 30 points. And I'm going to need a lot of points in addition to my bingo if I want to come back from this massive deficit I'm currently in. So Pixes gets me 30 points, that's 360. So this looks promising. I've cut my deficit to 90. If I bingo out with Kindarka, then I'm going to get like 100 points for that, and that might very well be enough. And it first looks like it might be enough, because my opponent here with this rack can't block Kandara, right? They can't play caught or something like that, because that would make AF. As I said before, they can't start a word with UF. They can't extend rhymey or veg or any of these words, so they can't block Kandara. And if they make a play from this S here, like a fairly short play, like let's say they play scuba or something here, then as we'll see, that's not going to be enough for them, and I'm going to win the game, because scuba would score 10 points, bringing them to 460, and after I bingo out with Kandara, once again from this cue, that is going to be 101 points. So I get 101, bringing me to 461. So I'm already ahead of my opponent, and then I get 6 more points from their rack for a total of 467. I would win this game by 7 points by a score of 467 to 460. However, problem is, scuba is not my opponent's best play in this situation. Instead of just playing something short to the S there, or blocking Kandara, which as I mentioned, my opponent can't, my opponent can stop me from bingoing out with Kandara by bingoing out themselves with the stunner of subacute for 95 points from this S right here. And of course, this wins the game on the spot for my opponent. They're going to bingo out. I won't get to make any more plays. They'll get more points from my rack. They're going to win by like 200 points if this happens. So this would actually be a disaster for me, because even if I hit Kandara, then my opponent just bingos out and completely foils my plan. So let's go ahead and try this again. Once again, the tiles here are all still in the pool, including the K and the A. Now, I haven't entirely disposed of the idea of playing Pixes yet, because maybe Kandara isn't the only thing I can fish for. And it turns out there is actually another pretty cool bingo I could hit by playing the same 2 tiles off right here. And believe it or not, it doesn't involve the Q, it doesn't involve the S on the right. Of course, the S on the right is very easily blocked anyway. It involves this jag on the left-hand side of the board. And if I draw both U's from the bag right here, then I'm going to have the amazing 10-letter bingo of Jaguarundi, which is a type of wildcat, right here. And that's going to be 110 points, because it gets all the way to the triple word score on the bottom left corner of the board. So once again, this can't be blocked by my opponent, similarly to Kandara. And it seems like this might be enough to win, because if I go back to where I was before here, right, after Pixes, I was down 360 to 450. I was down by 90 points. And my opponent doesn't at first seem like they're going to be able to block or outscore me, right? Something, it's not too hard to see that a play like Stack over here is going to fall well short. Stack would be 16 points. That would put my opponent up 106. Jaguarundi is 110. Plus I get more points from their rack, so that would fall short. However, just like the situation after I fished with Pixes going for Kandara, my opponent is going to completely foil me with another amazing out bingo. They're going to play Seat Back from this S over here for a huge number of points. That's going to be, I believe, 107 points that my opponent is going to get for that. They're going to bingo out. They're going to stop me from ever coming close to getting Jaguarundi down, and they're going to once again win the game by like 200 points. So I have these amazing bingos to go for, and it seems like Pixes at first is a good way to do that, because again, it scores well, scores 30 points, which is a lot for those 2 tiles, and it gets rid of the 2 exact tiles I need to hit those bingos. The problem is, whenever I get the exact tiles I need out of the bag for either of those bingos, my opponent also happens to have the exact tiles that they would need to bingo out from that S, and completely ruin all of my plans. So, as I reset the score pad one more time, that then leads me to the next question. Okay, I feel like I've stumbled upon a promising idea here, going for Kandara, possibly Jaguarundi as well. Unfortunately, it just so happens that my opponent has an out bingo from this S whenever I hit any of these 2 really cool bingos I'm going for. So, my next question is, can I play off those same 2 tiles in a way that would stop my opponent from hitting something from the S? And the answer is actually a resounding yes. The play over here that I'm looking for and the answer to this puzzle is the seemingly very strange play of Vegges for just 11 points. And I mean, this is just a completely bizarre and silly looking play at first, right? If you don't look at the whole picture, because you're scoring only 11 points when you're down 120. You're getting rid of what seem like your two best bingo tiles, your S and your E. And not only that, you're blocking what seems like the most promising bingo line on this board, namely the S in Yopping's vertically down to the triple word score, which once again, you can even hit right now. You can play there with sardines right now, yet you're not doing that and you're just what seems like completely blocking yourself from ever using that lane. So it seems like just a completely counterproductive play. But as we'll see, it is the best play in this situation. It's the only play that actually gives you any chance to win this game. So once again, Vegges scores 11 points, bringing you to 341. You're still down by 109. And here's the really, really amazing thing, guys, about the position after Vegges. No matter what tiles you draw from the pool, it doesn't matter. Your opponent will have no legal play in this position. You've gone from your opponent threatening 100-point out bingos like subacute and seatback to now, not only do they not have an out bingo, they have no legal play. And it's hard to believe, right? I mean, but it's true. Once again, the top left part of the board is like completely exhausted. There's just nowhere to even put a tile there. The bottom left, they don't have any words that could go before nim. They don't have a way to extend lot here. Plays like blot and clot won't work because they would make BN or CN. They can't extend jag. They don't have Jaguar themselves or Jaguar or something like that. And lastly, you didn't open anything for them with Vegges because they don't have a tile that forms a two-letter word going after an S. They don't have an I, an O, or an H to play there. And they now can't play from this S in Yoppings as a result because they're not going to be able to make anything overlapping the S in Vegges. And once again, they can't play on the top right here next to this Q. They can't extend Rhymey or Vegges. They don't have like an N for unholy or melancholy or anything like that. So there is no play here whatsoever for your opponent. Once again, no matter what you draw, which I think is just truly remarkable. I mean, it takes a little while, I think, to realize that after you even see Vegges, that they literally have absolutely nothing they can do. So your opponent, of course, would have no choice but to pass. So they're going to get 0 points and hold at 450. And now, here's the thing. If I now draw, say, the A and the K for Kandara, that's going to be enough to win because, yes, I sacrificed a lot of points to play Vegges over Pixes. I actually gave up 19 points, which is quite a lot. But the difference is I deprived my opponent of the opportunity to bingo out and steal the game from me. And not only now can they not bingo out, they can't even make a word. And I'm actually going to win by quite a lot here if I bingo out with Kandara, because once again, Kandara is going to be 101 points if I do manage to hit it. So if I get 101 over here, that brings me to 442, but that's not it because I get 1, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times 2 is 22 from my opponent. That's 464. So I would win by a score of 464 to 450 if I were to bingo out with Kandara. And that's not all, because even if I don't draw Kandara, I could still draw the other bingo I had before of Jaguarundi. So once again, the A and the K are what I would need to draw for Kandara. If instead I draw these two U's right here, then let me actually just get a new score pad. So once again, after Vegges, that was 11, so 341. My opponent had to pass, still at 450. If I draw the two U's, then Jaguarundi is going to be way more than enough because that's going to get me 110 points for the out bingo, which actually already puts me ahead of my opponent. That would put me at 451, and then I'd get another boatload of points for my opponent here. It looks like I would get 30 more points, and I would win quite easily. I'd win 481 to 450 after Jaguarundi. So that's another way for me to win the game, and that's actually not all after Vegges. There's another very sneaky out bingo I could get. So once again, this was if I drew the two U's. So let's say instead of that, I'm still down 341 to 450, I can actually win with a draw of KT, leaving my opponent these tiles over here. I mentioned how Vegges was very counterintuitive because it blocked the S in Yoppings, which seemed like my best line beforehand. I didn't entirely block it, because if I draw KT, then I will be bingoing out with Stinkered over here for a massive number of points, because I'm putting the K on the double underscore and hitting the triple. This would be 108 points. So that would bring me to 449, just one shy of my opponent. Of course, I get a bunch of points from my opponent. I get, another 22 points, winning 471 to 450 quite comfortably. So, if I go back one final time here, I now have 3 distinct possible ways I can win this game after Vegges. Once again, here I drew KT, and if I just go all the way back, these are the 5 tiles I am keeping. So I have 3 paths to victory, right? I can draw AK for Kandara, I can draw UU for Jaguarundi, and I can draw KT for Stinkered. So, of course, the problem is, right, if I don't draw one of those 3 2-tile combinations, I'm going to lose. Because, yes, my opponent still can't make a play, but without a bingo, I'm just not going to be able to make up nearly enough points. And once again, my opponent would have to keep passing if I don't give them any plays, but there just isn't enough space on this board for me to do anything, right? Like, if I say draw, AB or something, right? Something that doesn't give me a bingo. There just isn't anywhere for me to really go. I mean, I could play maybe Indaba over here for some number of points, but that's also going to give my opponent some counterplay, and it's just not enough, right? I'm down 109 points in this position. I just don't have enough. Sometimes you'll see a player stuck with a tile and end up losing despite having like a massive lead, but this board just isn't conducive enough to me scoring and really even getting rid of all my tiles. There's no way for me to get rid of all my tiles here without giving my opponent some counterplay with which they'll be able to score and start getting rid of their tiles. So again, I won't go through all the possibilities, but not at all hard to see that if I don't draw a bingo here, I will not be winning. That being said, there was nothing else. We went through pretty much all the other possibilities. We went through Pixes, we went through bingoing immediately with sardines, we went through trying to fish and open up a line. We saw that none of those possibilities ever won. So if I can at least hit a couple draws that win me the game, that's certainly still my best play. And now let's just conclude by calculating how often do I actually win. So the key number here you want to keep in mind is the total number of possible draws I could have. And that number is going to be 9 choose 2, right? Because there are 9 tiles currently in the bag, and I know I'm going to be drawing some combination of 2 of them. It turns out that 9 choose 2 is 36, and the way I get that is it's, of course, 9 factorial over 2 factorial times 9 minus 2 quantity factorial, which equals 9 factorial over 2 factorial times 7 factorial. And then I can cancel out the 9 and the 7 factorial to make it 9 times 8 in the numerator, because, of course, 9 factorial is 9 times 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2. 7 factorial is 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2. So everything from the 7 and below cancels out. That's the idea whenever you have one number that's just a couple larger than another number in the denominator like this, you can cancel out the majority of them. And then, of course, 2 factorial is just 2, so you get 9 times 8 over 2, which is 72 over 2, which is 36. So the total number of possible 2-tile draws is 36. And as I just mentioned, there are 3 different possible draws that win. However, that doesn't quite mean that my odds of winning are 3 in 36, because the draw of AK for Kandara actually occurs twice as often as the other draws, right? So there's actually 2 ways to draw AK, because there are 2 A's. I could draw this A and the K, or this A and the K. Both of those would result in a win. Yeah, I have to treat all of these for my calculations as separate tiles, because there are, at the end of the day, 9 different tiles in the bag. Some of them aren't unique, but what really matters for the denominator is the overall number of tiles, and then I take into account the uniqueness or reduplication when I'm trying to figure out the denominator. So, once again, AK occurs 2 times out of 36. Then my next draw that wins would be KT. There are only there's only 1 K and 1 T, so that's only going to be 1 out of 36. And then finally, the UU draw, this is also just going to be a 1 out of 36, right? Because there are 2 U's, but there's only one way to get both of them, right? It's not like with the A and the K that I can pull the K in either A. I have to pull 1 U and then the other, right? There's only one way to do that. So UU is also 1 out of 36, which means, right, that my final winning chance, 2 out of 36 plus 1 out of 36 plus 1 out of 36 is going to be 4 out of 36, which equals 1 out of 9 which is approximately 11%, right? That is my overall chance that I'm going to pull a bingo and win this game, which of course is not great. I'd much rather be winning, well, ideally 100%, but that's just not going to happen when you're down 120 points with 2 tiles in the bag. But in that kind of situation, you're often just completely lost. You have 0%. So if you can pull out an 11% chance to win, that's actually quite good. And I mean, I've seen many situations where a seemingly hopeless situation, somebody went for this miracle kind of chance. And I wouldn't even call 11% a miracle. I've seen people go for like 1 in 36 chances, even 1 in 120 chances and hit them. You just never know with Scrabble, and that's part of what's really cool about the game. You just never really know what you're going to hit, and it's always worth going for these things because sometimes it will pay off. And this would just be a truly amazing way to steal this game, seemingly completely snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. I mean, once again, you just like it seems like you're completely hopeless here, right? You're down 120 points. Bingoing immediately doesn't work. There aren't really any other obvious places you can bingo. If you try to fish with pixes, then your opponent just bingos out if you hit anything. And you have to see that not only does Vegges stop your opponent's out bingos, it also deprives them of any play whatsoever, which I think is the coolest part of this position and this puzzle, right? Not only does Vegges stop your opponent from getting a 100-point out bingo from the S, which they were threatening in 2 different ways before, it completely, no matter what they could possibly have, stops them from having a single valid play. And of course, if you do manage to hit a bingo, they're completely helpless. They have to just pass and sit and watch while you bingo out and steal this seemingly surely 1 game away from them. So yeah, pretty wild stuff. Major kudos to anybody who found Vegges and was able to solve this puzzle. Really impressive. Definitely a tough position, but it was super fun to build this and super fun to go over it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video and maybe learned something. And also let me know what you think about the new format I tried here today with going over it on a physical board and pen and paper instead of using the computer. I found it's a little bit easier when talking about all these different variations to illustrate them using the actual board. But let me know what you guys think. Do you want to see more of this? Do you want me to go back to the computer and stick with that? Totally open to ideas here, but wanted to give this a shot. So thanks guys for watching as always. Appreciate the feedback and hope you enjoyed it. And I will see you all soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye.